Israeli forces have recovered the remains of Ran Gvili, the last hostage in Gaza. Palestinians say they're now waiting to see if Israel will implement a true ceasefire, while Israel says it will focus on disarming Hamas. Later, we'll be joined by a former advisor to Israeli prime ministers, and we'll also be joined by a former resident of Gaza. But we begin with Saeed Arikat. He's the Washington correspondent for Al-Quds, a Palestinian Arabic-language daily newspaper. Saeed, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Saeed, as we just heard there, the last Israeli hostage has been returned to Israel. The remains of that hostage were returned. Now we look at what happens next. Israel says it is going to focus on disarming Hamas, and it said it will allow a limited reopening of the Rafah border, and this is the border through which humanitarian aid gets through to the people in Gaza. But of course, the occupation remains. What do you see happening next?
Yes, first of all, I think the fact that the remains of Ran Gvili have been first found and then returned gives a great deal of credit to Hamas. And that's what the President of the United States, Donald Trump, said yesterday. He gave them a credit for doing it. You know, they're diligent. They have been at it for a very, very long time. They have produced on returning all the hostages, so dead or alive, as a matter of fact. So they get a great deal of credit. That's number one. Second, everybody talks about the disarmament of Hamas. Well, in fact, the Palestinian people are historically been suffering from, the overarmament of Israel. But nonetheless, I think Hamas is said in so many statements and so on that they are not interested in governing Gaza, that they are willing to negotiate some sort of disarmament, maybe the so-called heavier weapons and so on. But look, it is obvious the fact that they have been able to do this, they're the only ones that can really, according to all experts and so on and report, they're all the only ones that can basically govern Gaza at this stage, especially in terms of security. So that has to be taken into consideration. I think the President of the United States and the American officials understand. In fact, the negotiators, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, realize that Hamas has to play some sort of a security role, at least in the interim period.
Now, aside, the next part of the ceasefire plan is reconstruction. It calls for the reconstruction to start in Gaza. As we know, Gaza has been completely devastated by the Israeli bombing. It also calls, of course, for the installation of some kind of technocratic government and a partial Israeli withdrawal. But the Israeli Prime Minister said the next phase, as far as he is concerned, will be just about disarming Hamas. And he said no reconstruction is going to take place. I mean, is this still a viable plan?
Well, it proves, Anand, that the Prime Minister of Israel keeps moving the goalposts and they keep changing the rules of the game. We saw this time and again with the ceasefire first. The ceasefire last January 2025, then again the one on October 10, and so on. We see him changing the rules. There's been practically no ceasefire. They've been killing Palestinians, a lot of children. Palestinians in Gaza have been actually dying of cold, the cold weather and all these things, lack of shelter and all that. So Israel has been controlling that aspect. What needs to be done is actually for the world that has committed to reconstruction. I mean, last week in Davos, we saw the President of the United States talk about this thing. He launched the so-called Board of Peace, or to reconstruct Gaza, to begin reconstruction, regardless of where we are in terms of disarmament. So to set this as a precondition under a condition where, under circumstances where actually the security situation in Gaza is so volatile, is not going to bring about peace, and in fact does not fulfill the commitment and the plan of the United States. Remember, and the President of the United States on the 29th of September last year issued his 20-point plan, and it talks about reconstruction. Of course, it talks about disarmament, but does not make it contingent upon that. And in fact, that's what Mr. Witkoff and Mr. Jared Kushner said just last week.
And so, one other development last week, the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, you've been talking about him, he presented drawings of what he calls New Rafah. This is a development plan for Gaza. It includes high-rise blocks, including housing, hotels, business accommodation. And, you know, the Palestinians have had no say in this plan whatsoever. Now, Kushner is not a diplomat. He's not been elected at all. He's not been vetted. What do you make of this plan?
A very good question, and let me just first say that the Rafah crossing has to be open completely, you know, for coming and going. It cannot be restricted by the Israelis. That is the deal. That's one. Second, Mr. Kushner can talk about all the development planning that he wants, but the reality is a different thing altogether. Palestinians in Gaza need health care. First of all, they need shelter, they need food, they need to be able to go back to school, to send their kids to school. They need all this. I'm not talking about, you know, these fancy drawings and concept drawings as we saw the president do last winter, as a matter of fact, when he came up with the idea of a resort kind of Gaza and so on, with high-rise buildings and so on. So you can conceptualize all you want, but that does not change the immediate realities. And like you said, Mr. Kushner is not a diplomat. He's a developer. He probably understands that angle. He may aspire to have, a lucrative kind of resort built in Gaza. Sure enough, it has a great location on the Mediterranean. But the fact of the matter is that Palestinians right now need more than anything else. They need healthcare, they need food, and they need shelter.
Saad Arikat, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
Al Jazeera reports that disarmament by Hamas in Gaza will be accompanied by some sort of amnesty for the Palestinian group. A U.S. official speaking to reporters on condition of anonymity reportedly made the comment after the body of the last Israeli hostage was recovered in Gaza. Joining us now is Alon Pinkas. He served as Israeli Consul General in New York and a former advisor to Prime Ministers Shimon Peres and Ehud Barak. Alon Pinkas, great to see you.
Thank you, Anand. Always good to be with you on CGTN.
So, Alon, this U.S. official says Hamas has agreed to disarm and that the peace plan calls for an amnesty of sorts for Hamas fighters, as well as the beginning of reconstruction. But at this stage, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is talking only of disarming Hamas, and he says reconstruction will not take place. So where do you see this going to next?
Here's the thing. Mr. Netanyahu is correct in that he's quoting from the so-called 20-point agreement from September. Hamas needs to disarm before reconstruction begins, and there's no clause there either guaranteeing or even contemplating any kind of pardon or clemency or a way out for the Hamas. So he's right in that respect. He's wrong politically. Because if this is going to move forward, it's going to take whatever it's going to take, and that includes perhaps free passage for those Hamas activists or terrorists. But here's the thing, Anand. First, there needs to be a Hamas disarmament. In order for Hamas to disarm, Israel needs to further withdraw, which it is not yet ready, or at least not yet expressed a readiness to do. Only then will the so-called International Stabilization Force be willing to go into Gaza. The International Stabilization Force, the composition of the International Stabilization Force is not making Israel very happy because it includes countries that Israel has issues with, such as Turkey and Qatar. All that said and done, no reconstruction can actually begin. That peace board, or however Mr. Trump chooses to call it, that won't materialize until these steps are being taken. So what I see is further stalling and procrastinating. I'm sorry, I'm not that optimistic about the implementation or the effective implementation of the next phases.
Right, from what you're saying there, Alon, it looks like we are at some kind of impasse right now, because as you point out, for the Hamas disarmament to take place, Israel would have to withdraw. There would be then a vacuum there, and that vacuum would have to be controlled by a third party or a third entity of some kind. Do you see that happening?
No, I'm sorry. I mean, look, let me put it this way in a blunt way for the benefit of our viewers. The likelihood of the second phase being implemented is equal to the likelihood of the war resuming. And the war resuming need not necessarily be along the lines or on the scale of what we've seen in late 23 throughout 2024 and into 2025. It could be local skirmishes. It could be targeted assassinations. It could be all kind of conflagrations that stem either from deliberate intent or miscalculation. So that's one thing. What Mr. Netanyahu right now is looking for is exactly what you described, Anand, and that is this uncertainty, this impasse, sort of a chaos. Look, this prime minister said for the better part of the last 2 years that Israel annihilated and eviscerated and degraded and obliterated Hamas. But when it's convenient, he's saying, well, there are 20,000 Hamas armed terrorists roaming around the streets of Gaza. How on earth could there be 20,000? So either he did not tell the truth or was disingenuous in the last 18 months, or something is wrong with this picture now. He is now expecting some kind of a lull, some kind of a hiatus that would cause Trump to lose interest. I doubt that would happen because Trump seems to be somewhat impatient, given that Greenland isn't working, Ukraine isn't working, relations with Europe and Canada are not working. So the Middle East seems to be, from a Trump perspective, the only place where he already claimed victory and hypothetically could claim another form of success. So I think he would lean on Netanyahu to advance. I'll tell you something further. This is an election year in Israel. And Netanyahu wants Trump's support badly. And so to get Trump's support in the Israeli election, and Trump has no equivocations about meddling in other countries' politics. We all know that, of course. In order to get Trump to support him publicly, even come here and basically hug him and raise their hands together, he needs to play ball. He needs to be in this game. To be in this game could threaten his coalition, even though it's an election year. So he needs to buy time. He being Mr. Netanyahu, is right now in a position where it's not a win-win, it's a lose-lose from his point of view. If he goes along with Trump, it's a bad sign for his coalition. If he does not go along with Trump, then Trump is going to become impatient, livid, and as he always is, erratic and unpredictable.
Now, there is also another big question mark over Israel's commitment to bringing peace to Gaza or imposing peace on Gaza. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that Israel is quietly supporting militias in Gaza fighting Hamas. These militias, which are collaborating with Israel, are based in those parts of Gaza which is controlled by Israel right now. Yeah. So what do we make of this and Israel's commitment to peace?
Okay, Israel have a very, very bad history with supporting local militias. We did it in Lebanon with Amal, an organization that preceded Hezbollah, and we got Hezbollah. We then did it with groups in the West Bank, and we got the Hamas. We're doing it now in Gaza. Now, when you say militias, these are criminal gangs. These are basically criminal gangs. It's all about the money and the medical supplies and the foods and potable water supplies. This is not some ideological. These are not liberal Democrats opposing Hamas. These are just criminal gangs who happen to see it convenient and comfortable to cooperate with Israel right now. I see that as a sign of chaos, not as a sign of order. And I don't want to transgress and go beyond the scope of our conversation. But we're only talking about Gaza. There's the West Bank. The West Bank has tripled the size, almost tripled the size of the population, double the size for sure of the population. And the West Bank is boiling right now. And while we're focusing on Gaza, things could happen in the West Bank, and that's exactly what Netanyahu wants to happen.
You know, Alon, now that we have you with us, I want to ask you about another battle that's being fought, and that is a battle that we have seen being fought over the years, and that is the battle for the hearts and minds of people. It's sometimes called the battle to control the narrative. And as an Israeli diplomat, you were here in the United States. Part of your job was to carry that Israeli message to the world, and most of the world called the Israeli occupation an illegal occupation. Now, there was recently a docudrama that was released here in the United States. It's now been released at movie houses here called The Voice of Hind Rajab. You're probably aware of this documentary. It's been dramatized, as I said, and it tells the story of a young girl who was brutally killed in Gaza. This movie has also been nominated for an Oscar, which takes place in just a few weeks. How does this affect Israel's view of what is going on and its battle to control the narrative?
Well, you know, you have to draw a distinction here between the Israeli government and the Israeli people.
Right.
The Israeli people understand viscerally, intuitively, and painfully that we lost the narrative, even though they are absolutely convinced, which they should be, that this was a just war, that we've been savagely attacked on October 7, 2023, and everything after that, everything that ensued was justifiable. Yet they also understand that there was a use of force, an excessive use of force that bordered on war crimes, or at least allegations of war crimes that need to be investigated, and people feel uncomfortable about that. Then you have the government, which would always deflect this and call this, oh, it's anti-Semitism and it's anti-Zionism disguised as anti-Semitism, or anti-Semitism disguised as anti-Zionism. I don't want to confuse our viewers. And so in that respect, you lose the narrative on two levels. First of all, chronologically, if you recall, if our viewers recall, in the first few weeks after October 7th, 2023, the entire world supported Israel. Okay? The Empire State Building was lit in blue and white. The British Parliament was lit in blue and white. The German Bundestag was lit in blue and white, symbolizing the colors of the Israeli flag. And within a month, into November, maybe December of 2023, public opinion began changing, and Israel completely lost any control over the narrative, blaming everyone for anti-Semitism and radicalism and progressivism and what have you. That's one level. On another level, you know, you could play the alphabet soup. It started with the letter O, occupation. Israel said, no, this can't be the narrative. We can't be occupiers in our own land. We never occupied. 1967 was a defensive war. Okay, after occupation came W, war crimes. And Israel said, no, we're the most moral country in the world. We don't commit war crimes. After W came G, genocide, which Israel did not commit, but nonetheless, there are allegations. My point is not to try and be clever here, and my point is, if you look at the letters, occupation, and then war crimes, and then genocide, you see how Israel gradually and chronologically lost the narrative.
Right. Alon, Pinkas, thanks so much for being with us. As we mentioned earlier, U.S. envoy Jared Kushner presented a master plan for the reconstruction of Gaza with an estimated cost of more than $25 billion. Other reports, including details from a 32-page proposal dubbed Project Sunrise, have placed the cost of the long-term 10-year development plan at over $112 billion. For more on that, we turn now to Abdel Bari Atwan. He is Editor-in-Chief of Rai-al-Youm, an independent pan-Arab digital news and opinion website. Abdel Bari Atwan, great to have you with us. Now, you are a native of Gaza. That's where you come from. That's where you grew up. That is your home. And if we look at what has happened over the past few years, it's been devastated. It's been reduced to rubble, to ruins. Everything, homes, schools, hospitals, businesses, markets, all have been destroyed. Now we have this plan by Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, to turn Gaza into some kind of replica of Las Vegas. He says this plan would give Gaza Palestinians an opportunity, in his words, to live their aspirations. What is your response to that?
My response is by asking a question. Why they destroyed Gaza? About 95% of Gaza was destroyed completely. Why actually they killed more than 75,000 of the Gazans? So how they can their life actually better when every family got somebody of dear people, members of this family killed and still maybe injured or disabled by these Israeli crimes there. So now Kushner is coming to us and saying, yeah, we made Gaza, very beautiful, another Dubai. So it seems that, they killed the people, they destroyed Gaza in order to turn Gaza to some sort of real estate opportunities for Kushner and other members of the so-called board of peace in order to make billions of money out of Gazan bloods.
Abdel Bari Atwan, what do you think happens next in Gaza? The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, he says he is now going to be focused on disarming Hamas. He says there will be no reconstruction. Do you believe that Hamas has been defeated?
No, I don't believe Hamas was defeated. Hamas is still there. Most of the people in Gaza are Hamas sympathizers. This is the question. And if you notice something which is extremely important, they are talking about the glass towers. They are talking about sandy beaches. They are talking about parks in Gaza. But they never actually consult us, the people of Gaza, never actually, take our opinion or say a single word about the future of the Gazan people. And what will happen to them after that? I believe this is also looking for complete different ideas to actually displace the Gazan and take them out of Gaza and the last when they finish their plans there, or even before that. So I don't believe they are going to reconstruct Gaza. They want Gaza without people at all. And after that, finding excuses in order to delay the construction because they don't have the real intention toward that.
What do you make of reports in the United States media, particularly in the Wall Street Journal, that Israel is now backing rivals to Hamas in the besieged territory? It is arming and equipping these rivals. They are based in areas of Gaza that are fully controlled by the Israelis. Could this be the beginning of a civil war among Palestinians in Gaza? Is that what the Israelis are fomenting?
Yes, because Benjamin Netanyahu is looking for excuses, a pretext in order to delay all the reconstruction, to delay peace. He doesn't want Gaza at all. He wants to actually his people to run Gaza. That's the most important thing. He wants to build settlement on Gaza, Jewish settlements, Israeli settlement in Gaza. This is the aim. So now he is arming these groups, which is anti-Hamas, in order to create or to see to create some sort of civil war in Gaza, for the Gazans to kill each other and to make Gaza uninhabitable at all, and kick all the Palestinian of the people of Gaza out completely, and as the second stage. Now he is saying, okay, we return all our hostages, the dead and the alive one, and now we want to disarm Hamas. Hamas hasn't got, Tomahawk missiles, hasn't got tanks, hasn't got anything. So it is excused by Netanyahu in order to delay, the situation in Gaza, to create a civil war, and in the end to actually empty Gaza completely from its people. So Kushner and Witkoff and others can make a very, nice, wealthy retirement. And the same thing apply to President Trump if he managed to be alive and also in power as he pretends to be, or as he aiming to be on the end of this. So it is a Trump conspiracy. It is Netanyahu conspiracy, Kushner conspiracy against the people of Gaza, and to add more suffering to them after they lost at least 75,000 of their people there. And also all the hospital were destroyed completely. All the university were destroyed. So, but they don't say anything, any word in Kushner actually presentation and in Davos, meeting about the future of the Gaza at all. He talking only about, as I said, glass towers, parks, and the sandy beach. That's the only thing they are caring about,
Right.
not about the Gazan people. Yes.
What can you tell us about conditions in Gaza right now? Of course, it's midwinter in Gaza right now. We've seen major flooding in the territory. We've seen people trying to live in tents. There's been an effort to get children back to school. These are schools which are based in tents, and in many instances, as Al Jazeera reported, they have to run the gauntlet of Israeli snipers as well. So what do you know of what's happening in Gaza right now?
Yeah, I'm in touch with my families there, my relatives there. They are living a very awful kind of life. It is freezing there, and it is very windy, and children are dying because of cold, and there is no hospital. There is no human aid. Israel blocked and closed all the border crossing to Gaza, and people are suffering. And instead of actually making their life much better now, give them, at least, a temporary houses. No, they are just letting them to rot, to die because of, of starvation and because of cold weather, which is hitting them daily. And other thing, there's supposed to be a ceasefire in Gaza. Yeah, the Israeli kill at least between 5 and 10, sometimes 20 people every day.
Abdel Bari Atwan, thank you for joining us. And that's it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Alon in Washington.